Over 9 million workers across the UK have been furloughed during the coronavirus pandemic, with claims from employers totalling £33.8 billion.
Betting company William Hill says it's going to pay back £24.5 million of furlough funds, as the company is now doing well. So should companies who post a profit repay furlough funds? Joining us now is hair salon owner Helen Ward, who used the scheme to furlough 100 staff. She says companies shouldn't have to pay back. And executive editor of Times Money Mentor, Gemma Godfrey, who says profit-making companies should return the cash. Let's come to you first, Gemma. I mean, well, how much of the cash or how much of the profit should they return? Because supposedly if they return too much of it, then they might not be in the good position that they put themselves in.
The point here is it's all about companies that can afford to pay them back without obviously risking their stability themselves. Because keeping taxpayer money when it's no longer needed is like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Because businesses need customers to survive, and they'll lose customers that are going to lose their jobs because they're working for companies that are still struggling. And that was the shortfall of the furlough scheme, is it treated all companies the same. We've seen some companies actually profit and do better during the pandemic, like gambling companies, like online retailers, whereas others haven't been able to operate at all because of social distancing. So rather than treating the furlough money like free money, treating it like a loan to repay, to pass on to others more in need. And there are lots of people out there that didn't have any support, that weren't furloughed at all, but still pay taxes. And these taxes could rise to be able to pay for the furlough if it's not repaid. So look, companies have done a brilliant job of looking after their employees, but now it's about looking after customers.
It's fascinating, isn't it, just looking at some of the big names. Primark, owned by a billionaire businessman, furloughed 68,000 staff. Wetherspoon's 40,000 members of staff were put on the furlough scheme. Philip Green, who owns Topshop, Dorothy Perkins, Miss Selfridge, furloughed more than 14,000 members of staff. Are we saying then that those companies who, if they do, you know, some are in hospitality, some are in clothing, we know all of those businesses have been hit badly, but if they, in the future at some point, do start making a profit, would we expect them to start repaying some of the money that has been ploughed in?
I mean, the whole point here is we're saying that if companies are able to afford it, what they're saying is that the money that has been used to be able to look after their staff and keep them operating, of course it was needed at the time, but at the point in which they're making surplus money and they're making enough profits, to be able to plough them back into the economy, back into companies that are still struggling, that still need it, to be able to support those people in employment, which ultimately will help these businesses because they'll help their own customers. It's a virtuous circle. So we're not saying to not take the money at all in the first place, but ultimately we're saying that once they're in a strong enough position, and the government did that, the government has offered a lot of loans rather than grants to small businesses, and we're just saying, you know, why don't you treat the money like that when they're in a position to be able to repay it? Because otherwise, in order to fund it, we're going to have taxes increase, and everyone's going to suffer as well.
Probably quite good for your brand, isn't it, if you sort of announce that you're going to repay taxpayers' money? I think we'd all sort of warm to that brand, and there are some saying that they're going to do that. Helen, you know, hairdressers have reopened. How's business doing for you? Have you got all the 100 staff? Was it 100 staff you had to furlough? Are they back? What's going on?
They are back, and they were going to be back until we found out on Friday that we couldn't do treatments on the face in the spa. So now we're sort of back to square one in the spa. But the thing is, for us, what we sell, when you sell treatments, you actually sell time. And there's no way we can go back and recoup what we've lost, our lost income. You know, that client that was going to get her hair cut in April and her legs waxed in May and her lights done in June, those things I can't get back again. So I think it has to be about whether you can recoup what you've lost. I mean, you know, for us, that's going to be extremely hard. Our clients have come back, but of course now their hair is being done, and it's the hair that they would have come back for at this time. Yeah. So we can't get those funds back again.
Would you appreciate seeing some of the bigger companies handing back taxpayers' money? Because I suppose in the end, should you need more help, and we were talking on Loose Women yesterday about how obviously we've had the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which is good for the hospitality industry, one hopes, but beauty industry is really in trouble, I think, actually, and still, you know, there's no sort of suggestion of when it'll open. Would you like to see some of the repaid money being ploughed back into new schemes for the beauty industry, Helen?
Yes, I would, and I just think we need to know, you know, we need an explanation of why it's okay for a guy to get a beard trim, whereas we can't do treatments on the face. we're all just perplexed. We don't know what's going on. You know, if they explained it to us, then perhaps we could start to plan and forecast. It's impossible. And, you know, with what we do, it is one-to-one. It's very, very close. We know that. And it's about how the client feels. You know, we can't get those clients to feel good about themselves if we can't trade. So it's a very, very tough time. And the scheme's been fantastic, but we do need to rethink it now, because if we are going to go into this next spike and this next wave, we need to know how we can make that work for us and use it as and when we need to, and only when we need to.
Well, we wish you well, Helen. And we've got a Twitter poll, interestingly, asking that very question. Should firms that furloughed staff pay the money back if they make a profit? And, I mean, I'm surprised at how many people say no. 33% say no. And perhaps those are who sort of agree with Helen. And 67% say yes. And it's interesting because there's Barratt Developments, ASOS, IKEA, who have announced that they are planning on giving back millions of pounds.
I think as you know,
that they took on the furlough scheme.
Yeah, and thank you both, Helen and Gemma, for joining us this morning. But you know, I think it's, you know, Helen made the point there that it sort of feels like the size of the company. Some of these big multinational companies, perhaps they can afford to do that. But I imagine a lot of the 33% that voted, you know, no, might be small companies themselves.
Yeah, certainly are.
And so,
yeah.